The man my daughter loved looked perfect, until my family began falling apart. I said those words out loud for the first time the night my daughter screamed at me to get out of my own house. It happened fast. Too fast. She stood between me and him, her voice shaking, her hands trembling, but her eyes were cold. I had never seen her look at me like that. "Stop it, Dad. You're ruining everything," she shouted. And him? He just stood there, behind her, calm, quiet, almost patient, like he was waiting for this moment. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry at first. I was confused, because all I had done was ask a question. "Why are you checking your phone?" I asked him. That's it. One simple question. But somehow, that question turned into me being the problem. "You don't trust him," my daughter snapped. "I trust you," I said. "But something isn't right." My wife stepped in then, not to calm things down, not to support me, but to defend him. "He's just trying to help," she said softly. "You're overreacting again." Again. That word hit harder than anything. When did I become the man who overreacts? When did I become the outsider in my own home? I looked at him again. He still hadn't said a word, but he was watching me, carefully, like he was studying how far he had pushed things and how much further he could go. That's when I felt it. Not anger, not fear, something worse. The feeling that I was already too late, because whatever was happening in my house had already started long before I noticed. And I had no idea how deep it went. If you met him the first time, you would have liked him. Everyone did. He was polite, soft-spoken, always respectful. The kind of young man who looked you in the eye when he talked. The kind who helped clean up without being asked. When my daughter first brought him home, I remember thinking maybe we got lucky. After everything we had been through as a family, we deserved something easy. He laughed at my jokes, asked me about my work, listened like it mattered. That's what got me. He listened. Not just to me. To all of us. He remembered things. Small things. My wife's headaches. My daughter's stress at school. Even the way I liked my coffee. At the time, it felt thoughtful. Now, I see it differently. Because the changes didn't happen all at once. They were quiet, slow, easy to ignore. My daughter started spending more time in her room. That made sense. She was in love. My wife started talking to him more. Also normal. But then came the first strange moment. I walked into the kitchen one night and they both stopped talking. Not paused. Stopped. Like I wasn't supposed to hear the end of that conversation. "What were you saying?" I asked. "Nothing important," my wife said quickly. Too quickly. He smiled at me. That same calm smile. "You work too much," he said. "You should rest more." It sounded like concern, but something about it felt placed. Like he wasn't just speaking. He was planting something. I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things. Families go through phases. People adjust. Nothing stays the same forever. That's what I believed. Until I started noticing that every small change somehow made me feel like I didn't belong anymore. And the strangest part? He never did anything wrong. Not once. At least, not in a way you could prove. The first real crack didn't come from him. It came from my daughter. She stopped telling me things. At first, it was small. Skipping our usual talks. Staying on her phone more. Laughing at messages she wouldn't share. I told myself it was normal. Then one night, I asked her a simple question. "How was your day?" She didn't even look up. Fine. That was it. Fine. My daughter used to tell me everything. The good, the bad, the small details that didn't matter. But now, I was getting one-word answers. Later that night, I heard her talking in her room. Her voice was soft, emotional. I knocked lightly. Silence. Then her voice again, but different now. Flat. "Come in." When I opened the door, she was alone. Phone face down. Eyes dry. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. "No one." Another lie. Clear. Simple. Easy. I didn't push. I didn't want to fight. But something inside me shifted. The next morning, I saw him again. He greeted me like always. "Morning," he said. Same calm tone. Same polite smile. Like nothing had changed. But I noticed something new. When my daughter looked at him, she looked relieved. Not happy. Relieved. Like he was the only place she felt safe. And somehow, I had become the opposite. That's when I started asking myself a question I didn't want to answer. What had he said to her when I wasn't around? It didn't happen in one argument. It happened in 100 small moments. That's how he did it. Carefully. Slowly. I started noticing how conversations changed when he was around. If I disagreed with something, my daughter would step in immediately. Not to understand. To defend him. He didn't mean it like that. You're twisting things. You always do this. Always. That word again. It was like a story about me was being built. Without me. And my wife? She started doing the same thing. At first, she would stay quiet. Then she would agree with him. Then she would correct me. In front of him. In front of our daughter. I remember one moment clearly. We were at dinner. I made a joke. Something small. My daughter didn't laugh. But he did. Then he looked at her and said gently, "He doesn't realize how that sounds." She nodded. Like she already understood something I didn't. I felt it then. That shift. Like I had said something wrong, even though I didn't know what it was. "What do you mean?" I asked. He smiled again. Nothing serious. Just different perspectives. Different perspectives. That phrase stayed with me, because from that point on, every disagreement turned into proof that I was the problem. Not him. Not them. Me. And the more I tried to fix it, the worse it got. Because every time I spoke up, I was proving exactly what he wanted them to believe. The first real shock came from something simple. Money. I don't track every small expense. I trust my family. But one evening, I noticed something off. A withdrawal I didn't recognize. Then another. And another. Not huge amounts, but enough to matter. I asked my wife about it. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she said, "I needed it." For what? She looked uncomfortable. "It's handled." That answer didn't sit right. Later, I asked my daughter. She got defensive immediately. "Why are you questioning everything lately?" "I'm not. You don't trust us anymore." There it was again. Trust. Suddenly, asking a question meant I didn't trust my own family. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was off. The next day, I saw him again. Same calm presence. Same careful tone. "You seem stressed," he said. "Money issues can do that." I froze. I hadn't told him anything. Not a word. So how did he know? I didn't answer. I just looked at him. And for the first time, his smile didn't feel kind. It felt informed. Like he already knew more about my life than I did. And that's when the thought hit me. What if the problem wasn't just what was happening? What if the problem was who was controlling what everyone believed was happening? It started with small corrections. That's how he changed things. Quietly. If I told a story, he would adjust a detail. Not in a way that caused a fight. Just enough to make me second-guess myself. "That's not exactly how it happened," he'd say gently. At first, I ignore it. Then my daughter started doing it too. "No, Dad, you're remembering it wrong." Then my wife. "You forgot what you said." 3 people. Same pattern. Same tone. Like they were all reading from the same script. One night, I tested it. I brought up something I knew for a fact. A memory. A clear one. And still, they corrected me. All of them. Even him. "I think you're mixing things up," he said calmly. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This was intentional. He wasn't arguing with me. He was reshaping reality slowly. So that, over time, my version of events would sound less believable, even to myself. Later that night, I stood alone in the kitchen, trying to remember something simple. And for the first time in my life, I hesitated. Not because I forgot, but because I wasn't sure if I could trust my own memory anymore. That scared me more than anything. Because if I couldn't trust myself, then who could I prove anything to? And that's when I realized, this wasn't just manipulation. This was control. And he was getting better at it every day. The distance didn't just stay inside the house. It spread outward. Friends stopped calling. Family visits became shorter, then stopped completely. At first, I thought it was coincidence. People get busy. Life moves on. But then I heard something that changed everything. My sister called me one afternoon. Her voice was careful. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "Why?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Your daughter told me you've been difficult lately." Difficult. That word again. I felt my chest tighten. What exactly did she say? Another pause. She said you've been controlling. That you get angry over small things. That wasn't true. Not even close. But someone believed it. Because it didn't come out of nowhere. After that call, everything started making sense. Why people were distant. Why conversations felt different. Why I felt like I was being watched, judged, even when I wasn't there. That evening, I asked my daughter directly, "Have you been talking about me to others?" She didn't hesitate. Yes. No guilt. No hesitation. Why? I asked. Because someone needs to be honest about what's happening. Honest. That word felt like a weapon. Who told you that? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because I already knew. I looked past her. And there he was. Standing in the hallway. Silent. Watching. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just losing my family. I was being replaced. I stopped raising my voice after that. Not because things got better, but because I realized something dangerous. Every time I reacted, I lost. So I went quiet. And that's when everything changed again. At first, they seemed confused. My daughter kept watching me, like she was waiting for me to argue. My wife asked if something was wrong. Even him, he paid closer attention. But I stayed calm. I answered simply. No emotion. No pushback. And for a moment, I thought maybe this would slow things down. I was wrong. Because the less I reacted, the more they started pushing. Small comments. Little accusations. You've been distant. You don't talk anymore. You're acting strange. It didn't make sense. They were the ones who pulled away. But now, I was being blamed for the distance. One night, my daughter said something that hit harder than anything before. "I don't feel safe talking to you anymore." Safe. That word didn't belong in our home. Not like that. "What do you mean?" I asked. She looked at him before answering. That was the moment. That quick glance. Like she needed to check something. Like she needed permission. "You twist things," she said. "You make people feel small." I stood there in silence. Because I had never heard those words from her before. Not once. And now they came out so easily. Too easily. I looked at him. He didn't smile this time. He just nodded slightly. Like something had just been confirmed. And that's when I understood something new. This wasn't just about breaking me. It was about making them believe they were better without me. I started noticing patterns. Real patterns. Things I had ignored before. Every time something changed, he had been alone with one of them first. A quiet conversation. A walk. A moment in the kitchen. Always just enough time to say something and leave no trace. So I paid attention. One afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard voices. Low. Serious. Coming from the living room. I didn't walk in right away. I listened. "He doesn't realize how he comes across," his voice said. Then my wife. "I've tried to explain that to him." Explain what? I stepped in. Silence. Instant. They both turned to look at me. Same expression. Calm. Controlled. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Nothing important," my wife said again. The same line. Always the same line. I didn't push. Not this time. Instead, I nodded and walked away. But something inside me had shifted. Because now I knew. They weren't just reacting to me. They were being prepared. Shaped. One conversation at a time. That night, I noticed something else. My daughter repeated a phrase. Word for word. Something he had said earlier that day. Same tone. Same wording. That wasn't coincidence. That was influence. And for the first time, I started asking a different question. Not what is he doing, but how long has he been doing it? Because if this started before I noticed, then I wasn't just behind. I was already deep inside something I didn't understand. And the worst part? No one else could see it. The argument that changed everything wasn't planned. It exploded. Out of nowhere. Dinner had been quiet. Too quiet. Then my wife said something simple. "We've been talking, and we think you should take a break." A break. From what? "From the house," she added. I laughed at first. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. My daughter didn't even look at me. She just nodded. "You need space," she said. "You've been causing tension." Tension. That word again. Like everything had a label now. A reason that always pointed back to me. "So you want me to leave?" I asked. No one answered right away. Then he spoke. For the first time in days. Calm. Careful. Sometimes stepping away helps everyone think clearly. I turned to him slowly. This wasn't his house. This wasn't his family. And yet he spoke like he had authority. "Stay out of this," I said. My daughter stood up immediately. "Don't talk to him like that." There it was. Instant defense. Instant reaction. Like a switch. "I'm your father," I said, my voice rising. "And he's trying to help," she shot back. Help. That word again. Always the same words. Different moments. Same meaning. I looked at my wife. Waiting. Hoping. She avoided my eyes. That was the moment. The real breaking point. Not the argument. Not the words. But the silence. Because in that silence, I realized something I had been avoiding. I wasn't being pushed out slowly anymore. They were ready. Ready to remove me completely. And somehow, he had convinced them it was their idea. That night, I didn't leave. I couldn't. Not like that. Not without understanding what was really happening. So I made a decision. I stopped trying to fix things. And I started watching everything. Carefully. Quietly. I paid attention to timing. Who spoke to who. What changed after each conversation. And slowly, a pattern became clear. He never argued. Never raised his voice. Never forced anything. He suggested. Guided. Reframed. And then, he let them come to conclusions on their own. Or, at least, what they thought were their own conclusions. That was his strength. He didn't control them directly. He made them believe they were choosing everything themselves. That realization changed everything. Because now I understood something critical. If I attacked him directly, I would lose. Every time. So I needed proof. Not feelings. Not suspicions. Proof. But there was one problem. He was careful. Too careful. He never said anything outright. Nothing that could be repeated clearly. Nothing that could expose him. Until that night. I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear. My daughter's voice. Soft. Uncertain. What if he finds out? Then his voice. Calm. Steady. He won't. He already doubts himself. I froze. Every part of me went still. Because that sentence explained everything. And confirmed my worst fear. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was planned. And for the first time, I knew for sure. He wasn't just manipulating my family. He was studying me. Once I knew what I was looking for, I started seeing more. Small things. Hidden in plain sight. One afternoon, I noticed my wife's phone left on the table. A message notification lit up the screen. His name. I didn't touch the phone. But I saw enough. Don't tell him yet. That's what it said. Don't tell him what? That sentence stayed with me all day. That night, I paid attention again. Watched how they spoke. How they avoided certain topics. How conversations stopped when I entered the room. And then it happened. My daughter slipped. Just for a second. She mentioned something that I had never been told. Something about a plan. A future decision. A change that involved all of us. Except me. Wait, I said. What are you talking about? She froze. Looked at him. Then shook her head. Nothing. Nothing again. Always nothing. But this time, I didn't let it go. Who told you that? I asked. Silence. Then she whispered, it just makes sense. Makes sense. That phrase again. Not emotional. Not personal. Logical. Like she had been convinced. Step by step. That everything happening was reasonable. I looked at him again. And for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Not calm. Not patience. Satisfaction. Like a plan was coming together. And I was the only one who didn't know the final step. I finally confronted him alone. Not with anger. Not with accusations. Just a simple question. What do you want? We were in the kitchen. No one else around. For the first time, he didn't answer right away. He studied me, like he was deciding something. Then he smiled. But this time, it wasn't the same smile. This one felt real and cold. I want what's best for her, he said. That's not what I asked. Silence. Then he leaned slightly closer, lowered his voice. You're not the problem, he said quietly. For a second, I almost believed him. Then he added, you're just in the way. Those words hit harder than anything before. Not loud, not emotional, just clear, direct, honest. And in that moment, everything made sense. This wasn't about money, not about arguments, not even about me as a person. This was about removal. Systematic, careful, complete. You think they'll choose you? I asked. He didn't hesitate. They already have. Confidence. Total confidence. That was the most dangerous part. Because he believed it. And deep down, I knew he wasn't wrong. Not yet. But something inside me shifted in that moment. Because for the first time, I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't reacting. I understood the game. And more importantly, I understood him, which meant one thing. He thought he had already won. And that's exactly why. He was about to make his first mistake. I didn't react after that conversation. I didn't argue. I didn't warn anyone. Because now I knew something he didn't expect. He thought I was still confused. Still emotional. Still easy to control. That was his first mistake. So I played along. I became quieter. More distant. Easier to ignore. I let them believe I had given up. And that's when they got comfortable. That's when he got careless. I started documenting everything. Not in obvious ways. Just small notes. Dates. Patterns. Conversations. Who spoke to who, and what changed after. And slowly, the picture became clearer. He wasn't just manipulating emotions. He was coordinating information. Telling each person a slightly different version of reality. Just enough to create tension. Just enough to keep them from fully trusting each other. Except him. He was the only constant. The only safe voice. That was his control. But control needs consistency. And consistency creates patterns. And patterns can be exposed. I didn't need him to confess. I just needed him to repeat himself. To different people. In slightly different ways. That's when I realized how to break him. Not by fighting him. But by letting him contradict himself. So I waited. Watched. And slowly, I started setting small traps. Nothing obvious. Just situations where he would have to explain something twice. To two different people. In two different ways. And for the first time since this started, I felt something new. Not fear. Not anger. Clarity. Because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. And he had no idea. The version of me he thought he had broken was already gone. The first trap was simple. Too simple for him to notice. I brought up a fake concern to my wife. Something small. Something believable. I might be changing jobs, I told her casually. She looked surprised. We talked about it briefly. Nothing serious. Then I waited. 2 days later, I heard him talking to my daughter. He's planning something big, he said softly. He just doesn't want to admit it yet. Not true. Not even close. But he sounded certain. Confident. Like he believed it. Or wanted her to believe it. Later that night, my daughter confronted me. Why didn't you tell me you're leaving your job? There it was. The first crack. I never said that, I replied calmly. She frowned. Yes, you did. No, I said. I didn't. Silence. Then confusion. Real confusion. For the first time. She wasn't sure who was telling the truth. And that's exactly what I needed. Not to convince her I was right. Just to make her question him. Just a little. That's how it starts. Doubt. Small. Quiet. Easy to ignore. But once it's there, it grows. I didn't push it further. I let it sit. Because one contradiction isn't enough. But it's a beginning. And as I watched her walk away, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. hesitation. Not in me, in her. And that meant one thing. His control wasn't perfect anymore. It just needed one more push. The next step was riskier, because this time, I needed him to contradict himself directly, not just through someone else. So I created a situation, a small family discussion, nothing serious, just enough to get everyone talking. At some point, I casually mentioned something else, another controlled detail, something only one person knew. Then I waited, and he took the bait. He added to it, expanded it, spoke like he had full understanding. But what he said didn't match what I had originally told. Not exactly. Subtle difference. But enough. I didn't react. I just nodded. Then, later, I spoke to my wife alone. I repeated what he had said. Exactly. Her expression changed. Just slightly. That's not what you told me, she said. I know, I replied. Silence. Heavy silence. Because now she had two versions. Mine. And his. And for the first time, they didn't match cleanly. She didn't confront him. Not yet. But I could see it. That shift. That quiet doubt. The same doubt my daughter had started feeling. It was spreading. Slowly. Carefully. Just like he had done before. But now, it was working against him. And the most important part? He didn't notice. Because, from his perspective, everything still looked under control. Which meant I had time. Time to build something bigger. Something he couldn't talk his way out of. Something that would force the truth into the open. Every system has a weakness. Even his. It took time to find it. But when I did, everything changed. His weakness wasn't emotion. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even ego. It was something simpler. Control. He needed to control every narrative. Every conversation. Every interpretation. And that meant one thing. He couldn't handle unpredictability. So I gave it to him. I started saying things that didn't fit his pattern. Neutral statements. Unexpected reactions. Things he couldn't easily reshape. And I watched. The first time it happened, he hesitated. Just for a second. But I saw it. That pause. That break in his rhythm. That's when I knew. He wasn't as calm as he looked. He was calculating. Always calculating. And when something didn't fit, he struggled. So I pushed a little more. Not enough to expose anything. Just enough to disrupt. And slowly, his responses became less precise. Less perfect. More reactive. And that created something new. Mistakes. Small ones. But real. And mistakes leave traces. I didn't confront him. I didn't rush it. Because I knew now. I didn't need to prove he was manipulating everyone. I just needed him to lose control. In front of them. And for the first time since this started, I felt something solid. Not hope. Certainty. Because his strength was about to become his downfall. I didn't plan to record him at first. But after everything, I needed something undeniable. Something he couldn't explain away. So I waited for the right moment. And it came. Another private conversation. He thought no one was listening. But this time, I was ready. I didn't interrupt. I didn't move. I just let him talk. And what he said was enough. Not a full confession. Not something obvious. But clear enough. Careful words. Strategic phrases. Hints of intention. The kind of thing that sounds normal. Until you hear it twice. Until you compare it to everything else. When I listened back later, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From confirmation. Because now I had it. Proof. Not emotional. Not debatable. Real. But even then, I didn't use it. Not yet. Because one piece of proof isn't enough to break someone like him. He would twist it. Explain it. Turn it around. No. I needed more. I needed a moment. A single moment. Where everything would collapse at once. And for that, I needed everyone in the same room. At the same time. With no way to escape the truth. So I started planning something bigger. Something final. And, this time, he wasn't going to see it coming. I suggested a family dinner. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. Just a chance to talk things out. They agreed. Even him. Of course he did. From his perspective, this was perfect. a controlled environment, a chance to reinforce everything. But what he didn't know was that this time, he wasn't controlling the room. I was. I kept things normal at first. Casual conversation, light topics. Let everyone settle. Let him relax. And slowly, I guided the conversation back to familiar ground. Old disagreements, past moments, things he had already influenced. And one by one, I let each person speak. Their version, their understanding, their truth. And then, I started asking questions. Simple ones, clarifying ones. Nothing aggressive, but enough to highlight differences. Small contradictions, different interpretations. The room shifted. You could feel it. That tension, that confusion, that quiet realization that something wasn't lining up. He noticed it. Of course he did. And for the first time, he tried to take control. Spoke more, explained more, pushed harder. But the more he spoke, the more cracks appeared. Because now, everyone was listening carefully. Not just to me, to him. And for the first time, they weren't fully convinced. It didn't happen all at once. It started with one question. My daughter asked it. Wait, that's not what you told me before. Silence. Sharp, heavy silence. He smiled, tried to recover. You might be remembering it differently. But this time, it didn't work. Because my wife spoke next. No, that's not what you said to me either. Two voices. Same doubt. Same moment. And just like that, his control slipped. Not completely, but enough. He tried to explain, tried to smooth it over. But now, he wasn't the only one talking. They were comparing, questioning, thinking. And that was something he couldn't control anymore. I didn't interrupt. I didn't push. I just watched. Because this wasn't my moment. Not yet. This was theirs. Their realization. Their shift. And as the room filled with confusion, I saw it clearly. The beginning of the end. Because once people start questioning, they don't stop. And for the first time, he looked at me. Not calmly, not confidently, but carefully. Like he was trying to understand something. Something he hadn't expected. And in that moment, he knew. This wasn't going the way he planned. That's when I stepped in. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Just clearly. I think we should listen to something, I said. They all looked at me, confused. Even him. I took out my phone, played the recording. Silence filled the room. No interruptions. No explanations. Just his voice. Careful, strategic, calculated. But now, without context, it sounded different. Cold, intentional, wrong. My daughter's face changed first. Then my wife's. Slow realization, piece by piece. And he stayed still, too still, waiting, calculating, looking for a way out. But there wasn't one. Not this time. Because this wasn't just words anymore. This was evidence. And more importantly, it matched everything they had started to feel. That doubt? It wasn't random anymore. It had a source, a pattern, a reason. And for the first time, they weren't looking at me. They were looking at him. Really looking. Not as someone who helped, but as someone who controlled. And that shift was everything. Once it started, it didn't stop. My daughter spoke first, her voice shaking. Why would you say that? He tried to answer, tried to explain. But now, every word sounded different. Every sentence felt rehearsed. And my wife, she didn't defend him. Not this time. She asked questions. Real ones. Hard ones. And he didn't have clean answers anymore. Because the truth isn't something you can manage forever. Eventually, it breaks through. And when it does, everything else falls apart with it. I didn't need to say much. I just filled in the gaps, connected the patterns, showed them what I had seen, what I had tracked, what I had proven. And slowly, the picture became clear. Not just to me, to them. And the hardest part? Watching their faces change. From trust, to confusion, to realization. Because the person they believed in never existed. Not really. And now, they were seeing him for the first time. The real version. The one I had seen all along. He didn't shout. He didn't explode. He tried one last time. Calm. Controlled. I was trying to help, he said. But it didn't land. Not anymore. Because help doesn't divide people. Help doesn't isolate. Help doesn't rewrite reality. And they knew that now. My daughter stepped back. Physically. Like she needed distance. My wife didn't speak. But she didn't stand near him either. And that was it. That was the moment. The exact moment. He lost everything. Not through force. Not through anger. But through truth. Because once people see clearly, they can't unsee it. And no amount of words can bring back what was broken. He looked at me one last time. No smile. No calm expression. Just emptiness. Because the control was gone. Completely. And for the first time, he had nothing left to hold on to. The silence, after he left, was different. Not heavy. Not tense. Just quiet. Real quiet. The kind we hadn't had in months. My daughter didn't speak at first. Neither did my wife. Because some truths take time to settle. And I didn't rush it. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't demand anything. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about healing. Slowly, carefully. They started talking. Asking questions. Admitting things. Small steps. But real ones. And for the first time in a long time, we were actually listening to each other. Not through someone else. Not influenced. Just honest. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't instant. But it was real. And that was enough. Because rebuilding something broken doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in many. And this was the first one. If you're listening to this, there's something you need to understand. Not everyone who looks calm is safe. Not everyone who helps has good intentions. And not every problem in a family comes from inside it. Sometimes it's placed there, slowly, carefully, so you don't notice until it's too late. I almost lost my family, not because I failed them, but because I didn't see what was happening soon enough. And the hardest part? They didn't see it either. Because manipulation doesn't feel like control. It feels like logic, like care, like truth, until it isn't. So here's what I learned. Trust patterns, not just words. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Pay attention to changes, not just moments. And most importantly, never let someone come between you and your family without question. Because once that space is created, it's easy for someone else to fill it. But here's the good part. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs the right moment. And when it comes out, it always wins. If this story made you feel something, share it. Because someone out there might be living this right now, and they need to see it before it's too late.